What do you think? Should America be telling Israel where they can and cannot build their homes? Even more than that, should America be telling Israel where they should place their capital and who they should share it with? Coming up right here at the Israel Guys.
Welcome back to the Israel Guys, where we believe that in a world of fake news, you should connect to the true and authentic stories of Israel. Guys, we've got a lot to talk about today, and I am, can you say furious? I would venture to say furious at this new reports of the American administration towards the Israel administration. Get into that in just a second. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, click the notification bell, leave us a comment, and don't forget, whatever happens in this big world, you should be able to always find us at theisraelguys.com. That's clear and straightforward. Theisraelguys.com to find our information, our videos, all the content. It's all logged there. You can always find us there. And don't forget, you can also get all kind of goodies there as well. Luke, let's dive right in.
Josh, wait.
Yeah.
We got last chance, real quick. We're running in the Bible Marathon next Friday, right. So this is the very last chance to go to theisraelguys.com/marathon or click the link below and sponsor our team of runners. And just a reminder, this show, this YouTube channel, podcast, theisraelguys.com, the articles, all of our content is 100% free. So like sponsoring our team of runners that is running in the biblical heartland of Israel marathon, telling the world that this place is normal and belongs to Israel, is our way of, is just another way of supporting the work that we're doing. It's 100% free, but you can support us. You know, we were out filming last week and our 10-year-old lapel microphones are just like falling apart. So this is how we're actually able to like buy equipment, buy cameras, keep the studio up and running. So you guys can go sponsor our team of runners. This is the very last chance to do it. Click the link below. It's theisraelguys.com/marathon, and you'll be helping Israel, helping the biblical heartland of Israel, and also helping to keep the Israel Guys content 100% free.
Luke, before we dive into the buffoon news, is that a word? The awful news of that we're seeing happening. Let's just talk about the good stuff first. We got 2,860 new housing units that have just been approved, and really, I mean, that's actually the cause for the buffoons getting all angry about it, right?
True, yeah.
So that's an amazing thing. Israel has
been a long time in
pushing
coming,
forward and getting this building
and actually,
inside Judea and Samaria.
The community that we're sitting next to right now they're one of the communities that have received approval for a whole bunch of new housing units. So that's very good news.
So as far as we're concerned, this is a massive push forward. You guys know us. I mean, the Israel Guys here, we're always for Israel building and settling the land of Israel.
Yeah, our name kind of gives us away a little bit.
Yeah, the Israel Guys. I mean, come on. Almost 3,000 units being put inside of Judea and Samaria. This is a good move.
And all of Judea and Samaria across 30 different settlements.
Can I just say something,
though, Luke?
It's ridiculous that we're even talking about this. I'm really negative right now because of the news.
A little fired up.
I'm like a little bit fired up about it. But you realize there's almost 700,000 people living in this area. 3,000 units is really a drop in the bucket to the need that's actually here. That's really actually a big issue.
It shouldn't be necessary to receive approval to build in Israel. You know what I'm saying?
Israelis should be able to build homes where
Judea and Samaria,
homes.
as that doesn't actually fall under normal law because they have not applied sovereignty to it yet. It falls under military law. So that's why housing units have to be approved and stamped by the Minister of Defense in Israel. It goes all the way up to the highest levels. Now, something else that's unprecedented, at least in the last decade, is that they also approved 1,303 units for Palestinian building units in Area C, also across Judea and Samaria, and in 6 different villages, from Bethlehem all the way to Jenin. Benny Gantz approved both of these because he's the Minister of Defense here in Israel. There has not been housing units approved for Palestinians in Area C, well, a few, but hardly any, in 10 years. Now, I have to clarify this, because you might be thinking,
the poor Palestinians haven't been able to build either.
Did you know there's over 12,000 housing units that were approved for Jewish building in 2020? In the last decade, that's the most that has ever been approved in 1 year. And guess what administration was in power in 2020? Okay, you guys miss it yet? But you might be thinking, okay, and this is what the mainstream media wants you to believe. This is what Peace Now wants you to believe. Oh, they haven't approved any Palestinians can't even build homes in the West Bank because Israel hasn't approved any housing units in a decade, and now they're approved about a third of what they approved for the Jewish people. you need to understand, and this is what the media does not want you to know. This is Area C, okay? Palestinians can already build in Area A and B without Israeli approval.
And actually without American approval as well.
Without America even caring.
America does not care.
The airplanes don't fly over and take pictures when and they also don't fly over and take pictures when the Arabs build illegally in Area C, which they've been doing thousands and thousands of homes, especially in the last couple of years. So you have areas A, B, and C. Palestinians can build whenever they want in areas A and B, and they also build illegally without hardly anyone stopping them in area C.
Correct.
Israel can only build in area C. So it's just a mirage when the mainstream media tells you that it's about time they finally approved 1,300 housing units for Palestinians in area C. No, they don't need it.
Luke, let me just bring this out, and we're going to bring this out like hard, like in a minute. We talk about inconsistency. When a government approves something, you talk about a race situation here. When you give the Arab population here, the Palestinian Arabs, one thing, and then you look at the Jews and you give them absolutely a different thing. There's no law that goes across the board.
Who's the world discriminating against?
Yeah, well,
Jews
there's actually
or Arabs?
It's very easy to answer.
Where's the discrimination happening?
Let's just outline it again. Arabs build wherever they want to in areas A and B. And they build wherever they want to illegally in C, and the world closes a blind eye to it, even though that it's completely 100% illegal. Now, Israel gives permits every now and then, like we just saw just now, for them to actually build legally in that area. Now, Jews, when it comes to Jews, okay, that's the Arab situation. When it comes to Jews, Jews don't build unless it's legalized 100%. There's not... Okay? And a matter of fact, it doesn't even go to, it's not just the defense minister has to do it. The White House is almost every single time involved with Israel building a home. I'm not talking about a new city. Like you would think I'd be talking about a new city.
No, I mean, we're...
A new home.
The 3,000 new housing units. You're talking about some...
Homes.
You know, Har Bracha got 286, I think. But there's communities, they got like, I think Efrat got 2. They got...
It's a huge city.
They approved 2 housing units.
Ridiculous.
For Efrat. It's, like a town of like 12,000 people.
Let's be clear about this. The world is absolutely 100% discriminating against Jews. It's backwards of what the world thinks. Everybody thinks that Israel in this apartheid situation against the Arabs. No, you got it wrong.
Okay.
The facts on the ground.
So Israel finally approved it. After a long freeze and basically a long silence, Israel finally approves homes. And what happens? Immediately, the United States, the U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, issues a harsh criticism for Israel. He said that the construction decision was, quote, unacceptable. There was tense phone calls between Antony Blinken and Defense Minister Benny Gantz, and he told Benny Gantz that he expects Israel to pay greater consideration in the future to the U.S. position on the settlements. We're going to talk more about what Benny Gantz's response was in just a second, but first, I also want to play a video of what Ned Price had to say about this, because it didn't just stop with Antony Blinken. Let's play the video of Ned Price's response to Israel's decision to build settlements.
When it comes to what we've heard recently, we are deeply concerned about the Israeli government's plan to advance thousands of settlement units tomorrow, Wednesday, many of them deep in the West Bank. In addition, we're concerned about the publication of tenders on Sunday for 1,300 settlement units, in a number of West Bank settlements. We strongly oppose the expansion of settlements, which is completely inconsistent with efforts to lower tensions and to ensure calm, and it damages the prospects for a two-state solution. We have been consistent, as I said, and clear in our statements to this effect. We also view plans for the retroactive legalization of illegal outposts as unacceptable. We continue to raise our views on this issue directly with senior Israeli officials in our private discussions.
Okay, we need to just highlight a couple things from this statement here, okay? And by the way, the video it keeps playing, journalists are like shocked by and they literally were asking for clarification because they said, this is the harshest statement that that the United States has ever had about Israel's construction in Judea and Samaria. Like, are you actually saying this? And he stood by, he said, yes, this is and he tried to blow it off like, no, this has always been our position. But like journalists were saying, and there was journalists that have been in the business for a long time saying, we've never seen such harsh criticism of Israel regarding settlement building before. And Ned Price is standing by his statements. I want to highlight a couple things he said. when it comes to what we've heard recently, we are deeply, deeply concerned about Israel's plans. In addition, we're concerned about the publication of tenders for plans, basically, to build new housing units in settlements in the West Bank. And we strongly oppose the expansion of settlements, which is completely inconsistent with efforts to lower tensions and to ensure calm, and it damages the prospects for a two-state solution. Look, we also view plans for the retroactive legalization of illegal outposts as unacceptable.
To Anthony and to Ned, these guys are basically, you're completely, can I just talk to them for a second? You're completely off your rocker. Like, this is insanity. There's 700,000 Israelis living inside this Judea and Samaria area, and you're going to tell them they can't build and they need to ask your permission to move. That's insanity. You got to get out of your head. The two-state solution is dead and gone. There's no such a thing as a two-state solution. It's impossible. This is a age-old political thing that's absolutely impossible. You got to get rid of it.
Do you guys remember last week we read from the U.S. Embassy Act of 1995?
Yeah.
From Congress.
Exactly.
Which they had the terminology in there about the I believe they said, I have to go back and check it. This wasn't in my notes. They said the reunification of Jerusalem in 1967. Jerusalem, the liberation and reunification of Jerusalem in 1967 is not separated from the liberation of Judea and Samaria. It all came together. The old city of Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria were all liberated in 1967. And the U.S. Congress, the U.S. Embassy Act of 1995 had language in the actual document that called the liberation of Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria that actually said that. Okay, so the United States has not always had this position. This is new language coming forth. Yes, maybe they've always been an advocate for the two-state solution, but saying that saying that it damages the prospects for a two-state, and also completely inconsistent with efforts to lower tensions and to ensure calm.
That's where you're completely off base. You can't. It's not the way the Middle East works. When Israel moves forward, the enemies of Israel. Okay, I want to get this straight. The ally of Israel is supposedly America. Right. America is supposed to be supporting Israel in its fight against radical Islamic terrorism. Let's get this very straight. I'm going to say this bluntly. This is not politically correct what I'm saying, but this is truth. America should be standing beside Israel. Israel is fighting a war, Iranian-backed war against Hamas and Fatah and all these other guys that are, backed. It's crazy. America is standing with the enemies of Israel right now. That's okay. We got to get this straight.
Right.
They're backing the enemies of Israel against Israel. Israel's greatest war against terrorism is where? Inside Judea and Samaria. This is the very area that Ned Price and Blinken are trying to encourage that building of who? Not Israel. They're trying to create, there's no such a thing as a two-state that's not a terrorist state. They're trying to, a two-state solution is an Arab terrorist state fighting against Israel. You can look at all of the Arab documents, all of their sources,
or look at the examples of where it's happened before, like
look
the Gaza
at the history.
Strip.
Everything goes back to wiping Israel off the map. And guess what? A two-state solution in an Arab mind is only one step closer to annihilating Israel completely. You look at Arab maps. There's no Jewish city. They're all completely wiped out.
We have the evidence. We went in the mayor's office in an
Arab
Arab village.
What is very revealing, Luke, I got to tell you this. What is very revealing is, guys, I want you to understand this. This is serious. Ned Price and Antony Blinken both know exactly what we're saying. That's the scary part. They know that Israel, the idea of the Arab regime here, the terrorist organizations, and the terrorist organizations rule. Okay? Fatah, we're going to get into some terrorist organizations in a minute. Hamas and Gaza, they rule, and they know their ideology. They wish to annihilate Israel. This is an ally treating Israel with this kind of contempt. This is concerning. I'm telling you, these guys know the facts, and they're treating Israel with this kind of concern. And this point will be dramatically emphasized in just a moment when we talk about the terrorist organizations. This is why I'm so fired up about it. The America that I grew up in, I love, and I respect, is not treating our allies with the kind of respect that they need, and especially not the prime ministers and the heads of state here in Israel. I mean, we're talking about the defense minister. That call, that's unexacceptable. Like, to nail the defense minister on an issue, the defense minister has every right.
Okay, let's get back into what Antony Blinken comes to Defense Minister Benny Gantz, right, who ultimately had to sign off on these approvals to build new.
And can we say
housing
that
units.
the defense minister has the right to make that decision? And he does not need
Well,
the
I think
Secretary of State's approval?
If we're really going to say what,
Can we just say
he
that?
shouldn't be the one making those decisions, because you shouldn't have
Yeah.
the Secretary of Defense in the United States
Making
signing
housing-
every single housing permit in
that's
the
in Israel.
whole of the United States of 340 million people.
Let's talk about Israel politics. What I'm saying is American
Anyways,
politics.
okay,
America
but-
should have
okay,
nothing to do with
Antony
this.
Blinken comes at Benny Gantz so harshly that Benny Gantz actually backs down.
Yeah.
And he comes back to Blinken and he says that before they approved these housing units, he tried to get the number as low as he possibly could, just to make sure it wasn't too many. He said that he understood the U.S. administration's sensitivities regarding the settlements and would take them into account in the future. He then started talking about how, in addition to approving new housing units for Jewish settlements, he also had been taking steps to strengthen the Palestinian Authority, improve lives of Palestinians. He spoke of approving the 1,300 units for PA residents in Area C, something that hasn't happened in over 10 years. And he also spoke about how he met with Mahmoud Abbas, even though he was largely criticized here in Israel for meeting with the PA, the leader of the PA. And for approving, he talked about approving the registration of 4,000 Palestinians in Judea and Samaria. And then he finished with, quote, "I plan to take more such steps soon." So this is a little scary. Okay, number one, Israel should do what they need to do. Yes, they should be America's greatest ally in the Middle East. America should be their greatest ally. But Israel should do what they need to do by standing on their own 2 feet, right? We would all agree with that. But number two, as Americans, our current U.S. administration should not be bullying the defense minister of Israel into backing down and pandering and saying, I'll take that into account in the future. I plan to take a lot more steps soon to cater to the Palestinians, even if it's not the right thing to do. No, that should not be the United States position. Their greatest ally in the Middle East.
Luke, I just want to say that the Mahmoud Abbas you're talking about, I don't think people understand. Just 2 weeks ago, I don't care about, okay, you could pull up a lot of history in the past, terrorist history. Just 2 weeks ago, he was inciting violence against the Jewish people, against the state of Israel, against soldiers, against citizens of Israel that were here in Judea and Samaria, inciting the people, the Palestinian people, to fight, to kill. Okay, this is the guy that the State Department is backing against Israel. I just want to make that clear. This is the guy also that the defense minister was talking with. Like he was trying to make Antony Blinken proud of him. Like I actually met with the I
met with the terrorist
I
leader.
met with the terrorist.
Yeah,
is that what Antony Blinken wants? The Israel to lower itself to that level. That's exactly what's going on here.
Josh, so more to say on this topic. I'm sure we'll hear a whole lot more in the very near future. We have just a couple more things to get to, but first we have, for the first time ever, and they're actually live available on our online store, and that is the Israel Guys hats. And I'm not just talking about cheap, low quality ball caps. I'm talking about high. We don't make cheap products, okay? These are leather patch Richardson 112 trucker hats. If you're a hat guy, you know that brand name out there, right? They say the Israel Guys branded on the leather patch, and they're live on the store, theisraelguys.com. We'll have a direct link in the description below. You can purchase those, and this is the only reason we're not wearing them yet is because we're still waiting on our box to show up here, and you'll see them on the show as soon as they get here, hopefully in a couple weeks. Great way, if you're a guy out there, or a girl, I mean, come on. If you want a great way to show your unconditional support for Israel's heartland, and at the same time, be pretty stylish too. So go check it out, theisraelguys.com. Leather patch hats available right now in several different colors. We also got the Heartland volunteer hats. Got to check it out.
Luke, there's another thing that's dissettling to me. It's not only the State Department, but one thing on the State Department. You know this guy named Hadi Amir?
Right.
This guy has Palestinian background. Now, this guy is actually working right there with Antony Blinken, Ned Price. Right. He's the one really behind the scenes causing all this trouble in the State Department. So we actually have we got the very own Palestinian linked American guy that's actually pulling the strings back at the State Department. Just FYI, that's actually going on in our State Department right now. So that's a little bit of the issue. And we thought the State Department was the only problem. Well, we got the UN is absolutely, if the State Department, the U.S. State Department's acting like this, okay, what do we expect out of the UN? The UN is
Well, we've never
atrocious
expected much out of the UN.
Well, yeah, we expected more out of the State Department than the UN, but the UN has absolutely dropped the ball completely, 100%.
Josh, Israel recently decided to classify 6, I think they're NGOs, but he basically decided to classify them operating here in the West Bank, I think, as terrorist organizations because they're directly linked to actual, I think it's the Palestinian Front for Liberation, and like an actual terrorist organization.
Yeah.
Direct, and I'm not talking about just like maybe they have some ties. I'm talking about direct links, so much so that some of them have even been arrested for terrorist activities. So Israel decided to actually go ahead,
label them,
and say we're labeling these organizations as official terrorist organizations. They're directly tied to the PFLP. Directly and actually engaged in terrorist activities, so much so that we had to arrest some of them. And what happened?
You know what? These guys really have a lot, the audacity to come back on Israel's stance against terrorism. Again, we just talked about it this whole show. It's about Israel's fight against radical Islamic terrorism and the U.S.'s continual standing up for these terrorists. This is what we're at. This is
the
the
US,
fight.
we don't even have time
Again,
to
the
get into
State
it.
Department is backing the terrorists.
Well, we don't
and saying Israel,
but
you made a mistake.
The State Department came out and said, "Oh, we're mad because you didn't tell us ahead of time." Well, Israel did, obviously, and they basically criticized Israel. But
they're criticizing Israel, Luke,
UN,
when Israel is bashing the terrorists and saying, "No, you're going to be classified as a terrorist," and the State Department saying, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa! Don't be talking bad about terrorists."
But the UN's even worse. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights condemned their decision to classify 6 Palestinian Arab organizations as terrorist entities and called for it to be reversed. She said, quote, this is Michelle Bachelet. I don't know how you pronounce that name exactly. She said, quote, this is an attack on human rights defenders, on freedoms of association, opinion, and expression, and on the right to public participation. I guess she's talking about participation in terrorist activities. Basically, saying,
go UN.
Of course, you have a right to participate in terrorist activities. Quote, these groups are some of the most reputable human rights and humanitarian groups in the occupied Palestinian territory, and for decades have worked closely with the UN.
Luke, this is the High Commissioner.
Wait, hold on. She said for decades they've worked closely with the UN. Does that mean that the UN has also engaged in terrorist activities? And if Israel has arrested members of these organizations, maybe they should arrest people from the UN too.
Not just maybe.
There's a thought.
No, it's not just a thought. That's a fact.
Because she's saying right here,
you're working with these guys.
Most reputable human rights groups have worked closely with the UN for decades.
I hope you guys understand why we're so
food for thought.
Why we're so worked up about this. This is like modern day, just blatant anti-Semitism on the world stage. And we're not talking about the leaders. We're talking about leaders of our world today that are coming out with these atrocious attacks against Israel. When Israel stands up for something right and true, these guys are coming up and bashing Israel on the back, saying, no, reverse it. You said that's nah, it's not a terrorist. Well, what is going on? And it doesn't just stop here.
Calling evil good and good evil.
Good evil. That's exactly what's happening in the world today. And now, not even the top of this, this is worse happening. The U.S. right now, the State Department, the whole Biden administration, guess what they're trying to do? It's all about this two-state thing. I'm telling you, the two-state thing will never happen. It's not going to work. It's a flawed plan from the beginning. But guess what they're going to do? Trump made big strides in this area. He actually agreed with Israel. There's one thing that a nation has every right to. And let me just tell you this very straightly. I'm making some bold statements here on the show. This is not even bold. This is just a matter of fact. This is true. Don't argue with me about this. Every nation has a right to decide where their capital is going to be. You agree with that?
If you don't, you're a moron. Seems like common sense.
Can I tell you that?
Wait, did you call me a moron?
No, I said if you don't agree with me, you're a moron.
Like
every country has the right to decide where their capital is going to be. Is that
what
just
I'm saying is like
easy?
You would think it would be common sense, but unfortunately, common sense is not so common in the world today.
The capital of Israel is Jerusalem, and Israel claimed this place. King David called it Jerusalem.
Okay, here's my opinion.
Yeah.
They're trying to reverse everything that Trump did, especially when it comes to Israel policies.
Yeah.
So Trump had the courage to do something that should have been done 25 years ago because the Embassy Act was in 1995.
Right.
So Trump did it. He declared Jerusalem as Israel's sovereign capital. He moved the embassy. So now Biden's coming in and he's trying to reopen the U.S. consulate in East Jerusalem. Because he's trying to reverse that. He's trying to say, no, Jerusalem's not quite your sovereign capital because you should share it with the Palestinians. Because one day we want a two-state solution. And it should also be their capital. And they should also have an embassy.
You realize how cunning this has been, the backdrop, though. He can't change the fact that the American embassy is It's in Jerusalem.
Right.
But what can he do? Something that happened then is the Jerusalem now is called the undivided capital. What happens if you take Jerusalem and put another capital? How do you have two capitals in one city?
You can't. Yeah.
That's unheard of. Is that anywhere else in the world? No, that just is unheard of. So how could you do that? Well, you're gonna set up another entity, and I'm telling you, this is deadlocked into their ideology of a two-state. They want to create two states for two different people on one Israeli landmass.
Right.
That's how ridiculous this is.
They want to split. They want to divide it. Last week's about dividing Jerusalem. The U.S. administration literally wants to see Jerusalem divided.
And that's what's going on. And these guys at the State Department are fully locked into this.
It remains to be seen because they actually do have to get Israel's permission. They have to get Israel to agree to it. So we'll hopefully Israel has the courage and the guts to stand strong on this issue.
Luke, I'm saying if America is going to pressure Israel to do this, no, I'm not. I can't say it. That's how ridiculous it is. What is America? If you do unto others, you're going to have them do unto you.
Right.
Is America? Could you just imagine this for a second? America, okay, we're going to dice up D.C. now. We're going to share it with other people. Welcome to put your consulates for what?
Right.
No, that never happened. It's not happening. Countries have their capitals, and it's a strong place, and it's a place where you protect and you keep your much less your enemy. I mean, you keep your enemies out of those areas. And right now, the Islamic regime here is fighting Israel. That's not somebody you're going to open your capital and share That's insane. Political nonsense.
Guys, if you think that Jerusalem should be united and should be Israel's sovereign capital and not shared with anyone else, especially enemies of Israel, then tell us down in the comments below. Give this video a like and also give it a share because this message is super important. In the meantime, tune out the fake news and tune into what is actually happening right here in the land of Israel. We'll be back next week right here at the Israel Guys.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. Go ahead and subscribe if you like that content. We can get it to you every week right there at your fingertips. If you really liked it and have questions, anything, we love comments. Go ahead and leave us a comment as well. If you'd like to even go further, your support would be greatly appreciated. We've got lots of content, lots of ideas that we want to keep pushing out there. If you want to support, you can go to our Patreon page or check us out at theisraelguys.com.